I think the most important key is we have to start sexual discussion early in relationships. All right. Even for those who are waiting till marriage or however long you want to wait, that doesn't mean you don't talk about sex, because it's extremely important to make sure you're both on the same page and that you both can be open and honest with each other about your desires and your even your fantasies. Because again, it serves no purpose to restrict expressing yourself or asking certain questions to then end up being with a man that you now cannot satisfy, or he cannot satisfy you, because there's no clarity in the relationship. So you're only undermining the success or the potential success of the relationship by being afraid to open up. And the reality is that we have to love each other at our core, and that means our sexual core as well. And I think that women have to understand, in my opinion, though there are men out there who may judge you for quote unquote being too knowledgeable or too experienced, I don't think that trumps, in most situations, you showing a willingness to satisfy his desires. All right. The fact that you are willing to even ask to actually implement the things that he's asking for, this is going to be valued way more than, oh man, but she's done this before. All right. And again, if he's the kind of guy who's going to hold that against you, is this really the kind of guy you want to establish a relationship with? Because then what else does he hold against you? What else does he judge you on? How will you feel comfortable being yourself around this man if you cannot be transparent in that area? So it completely is unhealthy to take that approach of, well, I don't want to ask and I don't want to talk about these things. No, we got to establish that early as possible.
I absolutely agree with you. So, in where it's undermining the relationship, if they're not actually opening up to sharing with him, how in your coaching then you walk the woman through expressing herself in that way, and you help her with, for example, that wording and how to do that.
Yeah, so I think, well, one, we first have to address the root issue, because there's a difference between he has given you reason to be fearful of opening up versus you projecting a negative outcome to opening up. You projecting on him, well, he may not be able to handle this. Like, if he has shown you nothing that says he will judge you on your past, then, but maybe you went through that with other men, or maybe you have friends telling you, girl, don't say nothing, he might use it against you. Like, that's a problem we have to address within you,
Right.
you know. But if it's an issue with what he's done, things that he's displayed that shows he's not open-minded, then before we even attack the sexual discussion issue, we need to attack the judgmental issue. We need to attack, okay, is this a man who is willing to create an environment where you can open up? Because if he's not, then you don't need to be with him, period. Like, for us to even dive into the sexual part, what's the point? If we discover that he's just a judgmental man who, in his presence, you are not going to feel safe being yourself, then we've identified you're in the wrong relationship. And at that point, we move forward. But if it is fixable, once we address the root issues, now we can go through, all right, sitting down and creating a plan for how we're going to have these discussions, and how we kind of slowly integrate that more and more to help the woman become more comfortable with opening up. Maybe she doesn't want to dive too deep in the first conversation, but let's maybe sit down once a week and talk about some things here and there with each other, and start laying some things out and build our way up to maybe the heavier sexual topics.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. I would love to address the fact that you said that having this type of conversation prior to committing yourself to the relationship, or if you're planning on waiting to marriage, and having this conversation before, what if, what happens if once that time comes into the bedroom, now let's say you're married, it's honeymoon night, or that's it, the woman decided to be intimate with him after she's felt the commitment, they've now moved in together, and now will be that very first time. What if there isn't that connection there? Or better yet, is there a difference? Because I feel that some of my patients have also been confused with
Mhm.
uh, is there a difference between sexual connection and sexual chemistry, even in the bedroom? Maybe you should elaborate on what you've written in your book, The Man God Has for You, which I loved chapter 5. That actually is you'll experience a genuine connection, not just chemistry, knowing that that man is right for you.
Mhm.
What's the difference?
Okay. So when we put it within the dynamic of sexual relations,
Mhm.
the easiest way to explain it is that connection feeds the desire and feeds the willingness to satisfy each other. Chemistry is the implementation and the way that we actually are able to flow together in the bedroom. So one, there is a difference because, all right, you can have two people, they
Mhm.
have this deep connection. And because they have this deep connection, they want to satisfy each other. They want to pour into each other. They want to perform their best for each other, right? But that doesn't always translate well into the bedroom because consider now, and there's various things to consider.
Mhm.
Two people who have a connection, the man may become very nervous because now you actually care about what's going to happen here. You know, people don't understand, and this is my opinion, and as a professional, you may agree or have a different perspective, but
Tell me.
I feel like people don't realize when you don't care, it's actually easier to have great sex because the hindrance of great sex is very mental. All right. So again, men get in their own way, they become more passive, they become more cautious. That does not play well in the bedroom. All right. A woman, she's all in her head when she cares so much. What does he think? Am I doing this right? And she's bombarding herself in a way that she's not able to even enjoy the experience as well as be truly present for the experience.
Mhm.
So when there's a lot of care and we don't know how to navigate through that, it can create a sexual experience that isn't that great. All right. Not because it can't become great. It's just that we have to now learn what's getting in the way or why we're having those issues. And to just finish the point of not caring, but when we don't care, like the man who doesn't care, all right, he's more willing to be assertive. He's more willing to be passionate. His energy is different. It comes off almost as confident because he's just going in, he's not overthinking. Sex is not something to overthink. You have to kind of flow with each other. All
Mhm.
right. And so if you're too much in your head, that blocks your ability to do that. When the woman doesn't care, she's no longer stressing herself about, is this too soon? What does he think? He literally becomes a life-size dildo to her. He's literally a sex toy to her because all she's there for is pleasure. You see, she's no longer connected to the emotional side of it. She's not connected to the, well, what happens after this? She's just present for pleasure. And great sex requires us to be very present for the pleasure. All right. We can't be worried about all this other stuff. Let's just focus in here.
Mhm.
So all that to say, now what I want people to understand is that, and this is why I believe so many people experience great sex in toxic relationships or great sex with people they're not truly into, because again, that lack of care, that detachment from the emotions and being all in our head allows us to just, it's more animalistic, just go at it, enjoy it. Whereas again, when our emotions are involved and we don't know how to handle that, it can throw things off. So going back to the question of, but again, I have to also say that doesn't mean it can't be fixed. Because here's the difference though. Sexual chemistry with someone that you don't really care about or you're not really into like that, it will not last in most cases. It's gonna fade away at some point. So it's only good in casual, temporary, short-term situations.
Mhm.
In long-term relationship, it's not sustainable. All right. Because to have long-term successful sex, you need connection. Connection is the fuel that keeps people wanting to pour into each other and satisfy each other, which is a huge piece of the puzzle when we're talking about great sex. So the two people who have a connection, they have the fuel. The problem is now the implementation. So going back to the difference between the sexual chemistry and the sexual connection, yes, they can have a connection, but chemistry is off because, like I said, he's nervous. She's in her head. They have not learned each other yet. I think too many people are living with this microwave mentality of the sex is supposed to be amazing from the jump. That's not always the case. It may just take a few tweaks here and there, just a little bit of patience, and it can change everything, you know? And so, but a lot of people just are impatient and they're not willing to be very transparent and talk about what exactly needs to change. What is lacking here? Why was this? Let's have those discussions, because again, if we have a connection, then I do believe we have what we need to make it amazing. But we have to understand that the chemistry, because chemistry is all about how two or more people flow together, how two or more people work together. And that's why chemistry at its core can be built and it can be destroyed. All right. Connection is a constant. It will always be there. You can't build it. You can't destroy it. It's just two people either have it or they don't. But chemistry, you can build it, and think about like sports. You put a bunch of players together, they can build chemistry. A corporation can have team building exercises to build chemistry. But someone does something stupid, it can destroy the chemistry of the group. It can destroy the chemistry of the team. So it's something that can come and go. So that is the difference, especially when we talk about the sexual dynamic of it.
I love how you elaborated on that. In that sense, so it's when the man feels pressure to perform.
That's definitely that can be one of it. Yeah.
And he was not able to, for example, completely satisfy her. And with the woman, maybe she just doesn't let go enough to obtain an orgasm. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as well as, again, people have a tendency to bring in old habits to new relationships. So
Tell them.
I mean, we're talking about, like, if we're gonna to talk about sex, let's get into it. Like, okay, if the guy is accustomed to giving oral a certain way that has worked on the last 4 women he's been with, or however many women, he may not understand that that specific technique does not work for this specific woman. Not that he does not have the capability to be great at it, but there may be a slight adjustment when it comes to her. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with her. What she did with previous guys that maybe drove them crazy, it may not work the same with this guy. But people get so stuck in their old habits because it worked for them that they don't know how to come out of that. And they also take offense to the idea that they're not doing it right for this person. Like, to me, my mentality is this. I think everyone should believe that they are capable of being an amazing lover, but you will not be an amazing lover with everybody. So I could have had 10 experiences, all right, that I blew their mind. But I'm still going to come into experience number 11 open-minded enough to understand it may play out differently. And it doesn't mean I'm bad. It just means I have to make some adjustments for her. That's it. We have to humble ourselves when it comes to sex. But everyone wants to believe they're so damn good that it's impossible, all right, for them to not have satisfied somebody. And it's like, yo, people are different. People have different spots that are more sensitive than others, that create more pleasure than others. People have a different tempo to how they like their sex. There's all these things you have to take into consideration. And I think that's the other issue that throws things off. And again, because people have had experiences where sex with someone was amazing from the jump, they get spoiled by that. And they think that should be the norm. And it's not. You got lucky. Let me tell you something. I think anyone who's honest, if you've had enough sex in your life, or more specifically, if you had enough sexual partners in your life, you learn very quickly that the majority of them are mediocre to below average. All right. Most people you lay down with are not going to be great. So that should tell you something. It's because, again, there's a learning curve. And we have to embrace the learning curve, especially if we love this person and we see we can build a relationship with them.
You are brilliant. I have had, you're amazing. I have had to literally tell that to patients as well. Because, I'll have a woman tell me in the office, with my first marriage, it wasn't like that. Our sex was phenomenal. Well, now you're divorced. So obviously, in my mind, I'm saying, but but everyone is a uniquely beautiful soul. That's the wording that I
Mhm.
utilize and so on to share with them. And you're absolutely right. That absolutely plays a part. If I may, I've also noticed that what does play a part, and we're talking about sexuality, sexual health, and relationships.
Mhm.
A woman that maybe in her last marriage, her last relationship, used to have mind-blowing orgasms, is now with this new person. But in examining, and I'm using a woman as an example, then I'll use a man as an example. Uh, I've noticed that she has weakened circulation, or she has issues with, let's say, varicose veins or spider veins. And I know I have to go into doctor mode for just a minute. Then I know that she's having poor circulation on the lower extremities. So she's with her partner. She wants to experience those mind-blowing orgasms. She's not as sensitive as she knows that she used to be. So I work on her and so on and so forth, feed her body what it's missing, nourishing, supplementations, change in diet, no more fried food, for example, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
That blocks that good blood flow. And then all of a sudden things get corrected. So I would love, in addition to what you've said, that everyone is absolutely uniquely different. Slightly, sometimes other factors play a part. So let's
Yeah.
say man as well, right? He's in his second marriage. He says to me that, our first marriage, I have a couple right now. He's 17 years older than her. And she, it, at the beginning, their sex was great, and all of a sudden he's kind of like waned. Well, it's also the fact that he's gained a bit of weight, and there's more fat
Mhm.
in the middle, and so on. And so helping them with those types of issues sometimes also helps, but definitely sexual mental health, I believe, is part of this. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to go deeper into that, I do think people overlook the physical aspect of this, how they are or are not taking care of themselves. I even believe, this may sound crazy, but I believe that the majority of men today don't even know what their true penis size is. And what I mean by that is because this generation of men has, a lot of them have grown up on porn and excessive masturbation. All right. I don't think they realize how that has negatively impacted the full potency of their penis. And so they may still be at a good place with it. Some are struggling and are not being open and honest about it. But a lot of them don't realize if they made some corrections to their habits, to their eating, to the way they take care of themselves, not only would the sex become more enjoyable, but they would become more well equipped to provide pleasure to their partner. It would change the game, and I think and then there's the other side of men who have become overly reliant on the pills that they come out with now, with some over the counter, some at the gas station. There's a lot of different pills now that men are engaging in, and I get it. I'm not mad at them for getting it, but I think what ends up happening is it blinds them from the lack of health going on within their body. And a lot of men don't realize, and I would say this applies to women as well,
Mhm.
how their genital the what's going wrong in your genitals is an indicator that there's something going wrong with your body. Like if you are not getting proper blood flow to your penis, that means you're not getting proper blood flow in your body. There's something off. If you're not having morning erections, listen, your testosterone might be too low and you may have blood flow issues.
Yes.
But people have become so accustomed to like thinking this is normal rather than realizing you are nowhere close to your optimal self. And at your optimal level, or at least closer to it, that alone is enough to improve the sexual quality, both for you and for the partner.
Oh, exactly. Agreed. Agreed. I over 20 years of practice, and I am seeing men, Stefan, in their 30s. having issues with erections.
Yep.
Not something that I used to see in the beginning of my practice when I used to help with men with challenges of impotence or erectile dysfunction. It was literally, over 50, over 60. I
Hmm.
feel astounded that I'm seeing younger and younger men with this. You're absolutely right. And what people are exposing themselves to, too much estrogen, hormone disruptors, yes. Low
Yep.
testosterone is exactly what you said. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Yes. So, my friends, take this into account. Sometimes all in your head, it can deal with imbalances happening in the physical as well, right?
Hmm.
Oh, love, love, love that you've stated that. Wonderful. Uh, Maybe I'll go into the second paragraph, shall I? Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. Or how about we move to how sex evolves? Because you mentioned that a moment ago, that it does change and it does shift.
Hmm.
Obviously, it shifts from relationship to relationship, but even within a long-term relationship, sex shifts. So you have in the second part of chapter 7 of your book, Cherish, sex evolves. Sex is not supposed to stay the same for the course of your marriage or long-term relationship. Just because you've been married or in a long term relationship a while doesn't mean things can't change. Men, like women, evolve. We start to develop different tastes, we start to develop different desires. Sex in marriage or a long term relationship should consistently be a learning process. You must
Hmm.
continuously reintroduce yourself to your partner. Again, this book was written for women. There are always new things that he may be open to or that he may be looking for. You want to be able to tap into that and explore those things. Be open and willing to talk to him about sex. Be willing to try different things out with him. In order to do this, you must be open minded. Love that. You can't come into sexual relations with your partner with any preconceived notions of how it should be. I'll end there. Uh, would you like to elaborate any more on that?
Yeah. So I mean, essentially, like you read in the chapter,
Mhm.
we evolve, we change for various reasons. Things may start to pique our interest later in life that we weren't interested in before. Things that maybe we viewed as, oh hell no, we wouldn't do that. Well, now we're like, well, maybe we'll give it a little try. Maybe a couple drinks and we can make this happen.
Yes.
And I think it is important to, again, people have to humble themselves. People have to not fall into the trap of just doing the same old.
Hmm.
And all it requires is creating an environment of openness and transparency that allows your partner to tell you when that new desire is popping up. All right. And again, it's the same thing. We would want the men to be free to express themselves, but we want the woman to be free to express herself. Because again, there's things that women thought they would never do, and then years later, they're like, okay, you know what? I'm open to it. And not only am I open to it, when they actually do it, they love it. So it becomes a new thing they want consistently that they didn't want before. And
Hmm.
that's why I think, the basis of marriage or long-term relationship or commitment to each other is we've got to be willing to embrace each other's needs and desires and be willing to pour into them. And that means, yes, the needs and desires may change. Now, listen, I understand that some people may have a line that they draw that they're not going past. All right. And that, you got to determine what that is. Hopefully it's something that you guys can discuss in advance. But I think just at least creating that environment where we can at least talk about it when that issue comes, so that we can address it in the best way possible and be able to sustain a great relationship. That's what's most important as far as I'm concerned. Hey, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to check this one out right here, and I'll see you there.
When does someone know it's connection and not chemistry? Because I feel like you might be tricked. We have this incredible connection. We understand each other. We get each other. I can't explain it, but I feel something.